but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, the protests re Israel-Hamas are continuing on the streets of Britain. I would actually say they are escalating. Many more are planned, including on Armistice Day, the 11th of November. Are these protests productive? Are they damaging social cohesion? And should there be any limits to them? Politicians, of course, continue to tie themselves up in knots over the whole thing. Half the time, I don't even think they know what they think. Or perhaps they do, but they are too terrified to say it. David Lammy, for example, he's been in trouble because he can't seem to quite work out whether or not it's okay to bomb a refugee camp. Is it? You tell me. And M&S have fallen foul of the offended brigade for showing... Are you ready? Trigger warning, are you sat down in a comfortable place? They've had the audacity, everyone, to show some Christmas colours. It is apparently deeply offensive because it seems to represent, according to some anyway, the Palestinian flag. And those hats that were Christmas colours were being burnt. Is this country literally going insane? And speaking of this country, whilst watching those Christmas ads, personally, I couldn't help but feel that they seem to be chipping away at our traditions, at our culture, and at our family units, the wants, needs and feelings of minority groups being prioritised over the majority. Am I wrong? Well, we'll be debating all of that and more over the next hour. But first, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Good evening. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Northern Gaza's coming under intensified airstrikes from the Israeli military as Hamas launches a series of missiles towards Israel. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is near the Gaza border. Mark, what's the latest?
Well, the gloom of the Gaza skyline is being regularly illuminated by the explosions from Israeli Defence Force missiles and artillery strikes as troops on the ground continue to push forward towards Gaza City. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has confirmed that those troops have reached the outskirts of Gaza City. The plan is to encircle that city before then giving the order to move in and to confront Hamas in its stronghold of Gaza City. We are also hearing from Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, who is on his regional visit now. Now, he said that Israel has a right to defend itself, but that democracies have a duty to protect civilians. And as well as the battle that's raging here in Gaza, Israel is also defending its northern border from regular rocket attacks from Hezbollah. Another barrage of attacks that took place at several points today. The town of Kiryat Shmona was struck, and one direct missile hit into Kiryat Shmona caused a major fire in the city centre.
GB News Home and Security Editor there, Mark White, near the Gaza border. Mark, thank you for that update. The Prime Minister says his AI safety summit would tip the balance in favour of humanity. Speaking at Bletchley Park this afternoon, Rishi Sunak said this had been achieved by establishing a shared understanding of the risks, an expert panel, and reaching an agreement on testing the safety of new AI models before they're released. He says safely harnessing this technology could eclipse anything we've ever known.
For the first time ever, we have brought together CEOs of world-leading AI companies with countries most advanced in using it and representatives from across academia and civil society. And while this was only the beginning of the conversation, I believe the achievements of this summit will tip the balance in favour of humanity, because they show that we have both the political will and the capability to control this technology and secure its benefits for the long term.
Hailstones as big as golf balls have battered parts of England as Storm Kieron brings with it gusts of more than 100 miles per hour. A major incident was declared in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, while flood warnings are in place along the south coast. Southern Rail and South Eastern have issued travel warnings, and hundreds of schools across the south are closed. A red wind warning has been issued in the Channel Islands, where winds have reached more than 100 miles an hour. The Bank of England has held the base interest rate at 5.25%. It's the second month in a row it's kept the rate unchanged after 14 consecutive hikes. The announcement will provide some relief to borrowers. However, the bank has downgraded its forecast for economic growth, saying inflation could stay higher for longer. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says his autumn statement will set out the government's plan to boost growth. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says it's too early for cuts to interest rates.
There is absolutely no room for complacency. Inflation is still too high. We will keep interest rates high enough for long enough to make sure we get inflation all the way back to the 2% target. We will be watching closely to see if further increases in interest rates are needed. But even if they are not needed, it is much too early to be thinking about rate cuts.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the figures show Britain is heading in the wrong direction.
Well, interest rate hikes have been paused today, but they remain at historic highs. And for the 1.5 million people looking to refinance their mortgages next year, that will mean, on average, an additional £220 every single month. The Bank of England today have revised down from low growth next year to no growth at all. The Conservatives have failed on the economy, and it is working people that are paying the price.
The COVID inquiry has heard that Matt Hancock wanted to decide who should live or die should hospitals become overwhelmed. Lord Simon Stevens, who was Chief Executive of NHS England at the time, said he discouraged the former Health Secretary's plan, preferring to leave such decisions to the medical profession. The inquiry is continuing. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, the columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and the editor of Labour Uncut, Atul Hatswal. Good evening to both of you. You know the drill as well, don't you? You can get in touch with me all the usual ways, gbviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at gbnews. Got a lot to pack in tonight. There's lots of quite sensitive topics that I want to try and unpack tonight, often related to the Israel-Hamas conflict, but much broader as well. Some of the goings-on in our society here, and certainly some of the changes that we seem to be experiencing. So I really want to bring you in to this conversation with all your thoughts on that. Scott, you were one of my first emails of the night, asking me whether or not my nana has got in early with her knitted Christmas present for me. No, she has not. I'm just so cold today. There's only one thing for it, the wool, isn't it? In this kind of weather. How are you all faring up, by the way, with the bad weather? Are you okay? Anyone out there impacted? Get in touch and let me know what's going on wherever you are. But of course, the top story that I want to explore with you tonight is all of these kind of pro-Palestinian protests that seem to be erupting all over the UK in recent weeks. These things are not slowing down, absolutely not. And actually, some of the behaviour, I would argue, is absolutely escalating now. You've seen some of this, I'm absolutely sure. We've had spray-painted mice being thrown into McDonald's. We've had different shop windows put through. We've now had situations where train stations, people seem to think they can go and sit among their main kind of ticket hall concourses to argue for free Palestine situations. We've had people spray painting different buildings. We've just had so much stuff going on. I mean, one of the things that I always find quite fascinating, some of the people that think it's OK to get on top of these buildings, spray painting it with whatever message that they feel fit of the day, why do they conceal their faces if they are so loud and proud and massively into the cause that they are celebrating? Why not show your face then? Never understood that, have you? Peter Hitchens, these protests, they are not going away. They will be ramping up, if anything, over the coming days, weeks, probably months. This conflict's not going to be solved anytime soon. That's the guy, like I was just mentioning. I mean, if you feel so passionately about your cause, why do you look like you're about to go rob a bank halfway on your way to a football match?
Well, I have to agree with you on that. I think you can't make it, I suppose, illegal for people to wear masks, but it does diminish your opinion of them. It's just like people on the internet who insult you from behind a pseudonym. It's not very brave or very convincing.
Well, that person you will have just seen as well. If you're not watching, if you're listening to me on the radio, basically just showing someone on the top of one of the buildings that they've been spray painting. He was escorted off that rooftop by the police and he was subsequently arrested. My point is, he's just completely balaclavaed up. You can only see his eyes. And my point there is why, if you're so proud about your cause, and you have every right to be proud about the cause that you're protesting, but be proud of it then and don't conceal your face. But where are you on this broader point of the protests, Atul?
I think there's a balance to be struck. The right to protest is a sacred right and one to be cherished. I think for the people organising the protests with good intent, they should look really closely at how their cause is being portrayed, because these are huge protests and it's very hard to manage those. But we see sort of different strands of provocateurs participating, from kind of people who are very adjacent to Islamism to actually members of the far right protesting to whip up anti-Semitic hatred. And the organisers of the protesters, it's incumbent on them to work with the police to make sure that some of the slogans that we hear, some of the chants, some of the behaviour is managed more appropriately, because right now they're harming their own cause more than supporting it.
Are they harming their own cause? Because many people will actually feel, and we'll come on to this in a second, they really want to expand this. They want to get 1 million people taking to the streets. And a lot of people feel very passionate that actually, by coming together, showing this solidarity, even if you have these kind of fringe pillocks doing these kind of things, people will still think that this is a positive, productive, collective action.
There's a difference between generating publicity and bringing more people who are already committed to your cause onto the streets and persuading the people, the silent majority. And let me just draw an analogy here, or draw a comparison. Before the last election, the People's Vote campaign, and I was I'm a supporter of a second referendum, got a lot of people on the streets. And what happened? Basically, at the election, an absolute trouncing for all the parties that were in favour of a second referendum. And there are people whose livelihoods and who kind of make money out of the media and clicks, who want people on the streets because it generates income for them and it's personally lucrative. There are kind of little groups of calls like the Socialist or Workers' Party who want people on the streets because they think they can attract people, but they are not trying to persuade the majority. And it is the hijacking of a just cause by people by groups and individuals with their personal agendas that trying to polarise and make more radical. That is the problem.
I've expressed on my programme already, I have a lot of sympathy for what people are saying. Thousands and thousands of children now are being killed in Gaza. That doesn't show any signs of slowing down. So I kind of listen to what people are calling for, which is to stop innocent babies and children being killed. I mean, it's very difficult to disagree with that sentiment. But I never seem to see any criticism of Hamas. Or I'm just racking my brain to see if have I seen any at all at some of these protests? Yes, it's all about free Palestine. It's all about stop the occupation or whatever. But where is the criticism from these people who understandably want innocent children to stop being killed? Where is the criticism for the people that are causing a lot of this, i.e. Hamas?
Well, I agree with you. I haven't seen it. And that's not to say that because I haven't seen it, it doesn't exist, but it doesn't seem to be a very prominent part of the protest. They would be more persuasive if they made it plainer in the placards that they carried and the slogans that they shouted that they were against the killing of innocents by whoever did it. And also, it does seem to me, I don't defend and, in fact, have opposed from the start and criticised the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. I think it's both wrong and a political mistake. But I think there is a considerable difference between what happened on October the 7th, that is to say, the deliberate, personal, face-to-face murder of innocent people, and the bombardment of an area full of Israel's armed enemies, which I don't myself take as a justification for a bombardment. But if you look at the laws of war in general, and if you look at the behaviour of this country and of the United States in extinguishing the Islamic State in Mosul and Raqqa, particularly a few years ago, the same method was used by them. Wasn't particularly keen on it then either, but it is accepted generally as something which you do in war. I'm not here defending it, but there is a difference between that and bursting into civilian settlements and killing women and children, and it's because they are who they are. Who in many cases are unarmed and are not at all human shields for military establishments or military operations. There is a difference. So, yeah, I would agree with you. I would like to see much more from the Free Palestine, as they call it, demonstrations about the initial October the 7th killings than I have so far noticed. And I would make one small comment, which I always make about the slogan Free Palestine. If there is ever such a nation, it doesn't seem to me to be very likely that it will be free, given the current situation of the Palestinian Authority, where I think the president was elected for a 4-year term 19 years ago, where the freedom of speech and the liberty of the media is not exactly guaranteed. Whatever such a state will be, free is not what it will be. The people who chant that slogan should wonder very much what it is that they're saying.
What do you say about what they're saying? I saw some protesters being interviewed the other day, and the guy was asking them a simple question. When you're shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which river are you talking about and which sea are you talking about? The guy didn't even know. I'm not even kidding. He didn't even know what river and what sea. And I think to myself, if you want to involve yourself to the point where you're going to be taken to the streets, because a lot of people are intimidated by what's going on the streets. They really are. And if you want to be part of that, which, you know, that's your right and all the rest of it, at least understand what it is that you're calling for. At least have like a little bit of gumption about you to have the bare basics that you're campaigning off the back of fresh in your mind. And this kind of omission of criticising Hamas by the people that want, and it's understandable, I can't stress enough, it is understandable to not want innocent children to be killed. I mean, I say this and people go mad when I say it. As a mum, my heart really feels that, and I feel it passionately. I don't want innocent children, whoever they are, wherever they live, and whoever's doing the killing. I want that to stop. But it is a glaring omission not to criticise Hamas and not to be encouraging Hamas. Show yourselves, get out of here, leave us alone, let Palestine move on without you.
It's a ridiculous omission, and again, it's to the people who organise these protests with good intent. It's incumbent on them to help to try and manage this and ensure that there are signs, the voices that would criticise Hamas are prominent, because at the moment these protests are taken over largely, and I don't think this applies to the majority of people protesting, but the most voluble and the ones who are covered in the media are the most polarised and the most extreme. And this kind of discussion on from the river to the sea, to an extent, the semantics don't matter. Jewish people in this country feel intimidated. They feel like that is a call to genocide. Don't do it. It's not that hard. It just takes some basic empathy. In the same way, there are multiple phrases that, for any minority community, you can say, and which technically are OK, but have been used in acts of violence and and have a laden meaning for them. Just empathise. Don't do it.
Well, you lead me to an interesting point, actually. I'm going to cover it after the break, which is the political response to this, because you're saying about that chant. We've seen that Labour MP losing his whip, essentially, for literally making that chant whilst on the stage. We've also seen David Lammy, Shadow Foreign Secretary. He's been tying himself up in knots about whether or not it's OK to bomb refugee camps. I've got some clips of him coming up. But what do you think to how the politicians are dealing with the situation? Have they got it right? Have they got it wrong? I also want to talk to you as well about the weekend of the 11th of November and what's planned to be happening there, and whether or not there should be allowed to be protests at that quite sensitive part. Well, in our country, certainly for a lot of people it is. So don't go anywhere, and I'll see you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and the editor of Labour Uncut, Atul Hat. Well, we've just been talking about protesting. Ian says, why does Peter Hitchens say we can't ban masks? He says France have banned masks to stop that kind of stuff.
Well, I think it's an unwarranted interference in personal liberty to start telling people what they can and cannot wear. I said so during the attempt to force people to wear masks during the COVID panic, and I stick to the same line now. There are limits on what you can do, and telling people what they can and cannot wear is something outside. France is not, in my view, anything like as free a country in its traditions or actions as we are, and its police are too powerful and its state is too powerful, and I wouldn't want to emulate France in that way or many others, so it doesn't matter to me. We shouldn't do it.
Do you agree with that? That we should allow people to conceal their faces during these, like I would say, these are quite heightened times right now. Do you think you should be able to completely cover your face in like a balaclava, like that fella did?
Rarely. I'm going to agree with Peter. I don't. I think there's in peacetime, and I make a distinction to when war or emergencies like COVID. People can wear what they like. What is incumbent on the state is to enforce the law. So you can wear what you like, but if you're on top of a building, painting graffiti over it, setting off a flare, the police should be there, nick you, and you should be charged.
I disagree with the pair of you. I think when when tensions are so heightened at the moment, yes, fine, go and protest and all the rest of it, but be accountable for your actions. So if I was, looking down the street and I could see people with their balaclavas and all the rest of it, I do think you should be stopped. I don't think you should be allowed. I think you should be. I say force, and then you're going to ask me how I would force it. But
Michelle, this is the law of unintended consequences, which Parliament passes about 20 times a year. If you once establish a principle that you can tell people what they can and cannot wear, imagine how it can be extended and what sort of things it could be used to do to you in future, which you might find oppressive. The making of law is complicated. You shouldn't offer hostages to fortune, and you shouldn't do things without working out the implications. To me, the implications of a law telling people what they can't wear those implications are very worrying, and would greatly reduce the liberty of the individual and increase the power of some future dictatorship to do things which it shouldn't be allowed to do.
Well, context matters. You won't be able to go into a bank with a balaclava on your face, would you? So why be able to walk down the streets in times like this? I'll throw it open to you to have the final say on that one. But also, I can't help
Banks are not the same as streets.
Well, actually, some would argue that if we had the kind of security that you've got in banks on the streets, then the streets might be in a bit of a better position. Look, I want to talk to you about politicians and their handling or not, mishandling, I might say, of certain situations, because a lot of people do seem to be tying themselves up in knots. The latest person that's come under the spotlight is the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. Let's listen to what he had to say, and he was talking about the bombing of that refugee camp that you'll be familiar with in Gaza, I'm sure. Let's listen.
It's clear to me that it's wrong to bomb a refugee camp. But clearly, if there is a military objective, it can be legally justifiable. It's for Israel to explain its actions.
Well, that was on the BBC Today programme. He hastily then, I have to say, followed up with a tweet. I think I might be able to show you that tweet. He's saying, as I said on Radio 4, it's morally wrong to bomb refugee camps. I'm appalled by the civilian deaths, and I called on and would continue to call on Israel to explain how it conforms to international law and how it qualifies as proportionate. Well, very quickly, Atul, people responded to that tweet saying that's not what you said at all, and I've just played you what he'd said, and I would argue his tweet didn't reflect everything that he'd said. The word but was very significant in what he said on the radio. Do you think that the Labour Party are handling this well? Because Keir Starmer has got a big spotlight on him over this at the moment, hasn't he?
I think Keir Starmer has done exceptionally well. I think back to what a mess the Labour Party could have been under Jeremy Corbyn on an issue like this. Keir Starmer's line is the right line, which is compassion and humanitarian pauses, but in terms of trying to support the flow of aid into Gaza. But we have to recognise what happened on October 7th. It's a pogrom, and it was instituted by Hamas, and Hamas are in Gaza, and we have to recognise Israel's right to proportionate response. 1,400 people were butchered, and it is in all the calls for ceasefire, in all the calls and outrage about what's happened, and these are terrible, ghastly, awful consequences. No one says or explains, well, how does that remove Hamas? How do we have accountability for the pogrom that happened on October the 7th? And until that's answered, and I see David Lammy was sort of backtracking a bit there, probably under weight of pressure from within on social media from activists in the party. But this is one of those times, and Keir Starmer has exemplified it, where we must, and the Labour Party must hold to the line, and Keir Starmer has the right line.
Well, I don't think they're holding to the line, are they? Not everyone's conforming to that line. People seem to be able to say whatever they want to. Where are you at with it, Peter?
Well, that's an intrusion into private grief as far as the Labour Party is concerned. What I'm interested in is the consistency of what people say and the meaning of it. First of all, anybody who's familiar with Gaza, as I am, will understand the use of the term refugee camp is itself probably intended to give an impression which is not entirely accurate. These are not lines of tents full of people who've recently fled from disaster. The places referred to as refugee camps are now towns. Made of solid buildings, and as such they are like most other urban areas in the Middle East, and I'll say it again because it's important, very similar to the city of Mosul, which British and American jet bombers pounded with high explosive for many days while they were full of civilians in an attempt to eradicate Islamic State. And I don't remember the Labour Party offering very much opposition to that. I myself was doubtful about it because I believe that the bombing of populated areas is simply morally wrong in practically all circumstances. But the British establishment of both major parties, as far as I recall it, was perfectly happy to do it. So to criticise Israel for doing what the Americans and the British did in Mosul is odd to me. I'd say I'm not defending it. I'm just saying if you want to get involved in these things, know what you're talking about, be consistent.
Yeah, but and that's the problem. They don't, do they? Look, so we're talking about these protests. One of the things that caught my eye, I'll just show you a picture, actually, a poster that's been circulating, doing the rounds on social media, because, of course, we're very familiar with the fact that people want to repeatedly protest. But should there be a line as to when and where they can do that? I'm asking because Armistice Day, the 11th of November, there's calls now for the Million March for Palestine. There's been a variety of different organisations organising coach trips, £20 a pop, if you're interested, that they will bus you in on the 11th of November to do this protest. Now, of course, Armistice Day is something that's very very key, very important, and all the rest of it to people in this country to respect and take moments of silence, 2 minutes of silence and all the rest of it. Do you think that's a day, then, when these protests should be allowed to be had?
Well, the intent of organising a protest on a day as sensitive as that is perfectly obvious, which is to polarise, create incident and drive people into camps which are black and white and where everything is, there is no middle ground. The response, I think, the response that they want is to be banned to an extent, because that's something that the likes of these organisations can recruit against, they can fundraise against, talking heads can get clicks on their YouTube channels. The right response is to allow a protest, but ensure it is well away from anywhere that is sensitive, and this is a broader point. The way to disincentivise these protests is to rob them of any media coverage. None of these organisations will organise a contentious and adversarial protest and a sensationalist protest like that if they didn't think they were going to get lots of clicks and lots of media coverage.
Mr. Stay, do you think they should be able to have free Palestine marches on that day?
I think it's unwise for them, from their own point of view, to get mixed up in it, and I would strongly advise anybody involved not to do it because it's because of the extreme bad manners, really, which are involved in doing so and in trying to eclipse and perhaps get in the way of commemorations of a major national act of solemnity. I know the main commemoration is on Sunday, but quite a lot of events will take place, I'm sure, around the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month itself, and I think that if any of them were to be disrupted by a march, it would be deeply wounding to the people involved and upsetting to many people in the country. So I just think it's foolish to do it, and I would discourage anyone from taking part, because it's, whatever your position, what is gained by upsetting and insulting people with whom you have no quarrel. One has to point out that many of the people whose deaths and losses are commemorated on Armistice Day and the day after were themselves Muslims.
What I found quite interesting is this whole kind of notion of who can offend who. Because if you have the audacity to mishandle a Quran, which is a book that many people, it doesn't have any significance to them. They're not Islamic, they don't follow that faith. So to those people, it's just a book. But actually, if you did anything to a Quran, then that would understandably impact and offend, and a lot of it all the Muslim population. But then on the flip side, when you've got things like Armistice Day and all the rest of it, which absolutely means a lot to a lot of people, then the same expectation to not cause offence isn't there, is it? The Met Police says we're absolutely committed to ensuring the safety and security of anyone attending commemorative events. We know that this year there's concerns about demonstration by pro-Palestinian campaigners. They say the organisers of the process have not indicated any plans to protest on Remembrance Sunday. They do intend to hold a significant demonstration on the Saturday, but they're engaging with our officers and have said they are willing to avoid the Whitehall area, recognising the sensitivities around that date. They also go on to say this is a weekend with huge national significance. We will use all the powers available to us to ensure that anyone intent on disrupting it will not succeed. Well, time will tell as to how that one plays out, won't it? What do you make to it all? GBViews at gbnews.com. Speaking of offence and all the rest, have you seen that Marks and Spencer's have now come out and apologised? Are you ready? You've got to brace yourself because this is very sensitive. Trigger warning coming your way. They've had the audacity, ladies and gents, to display traditional Christmas colours. Why has that been offended? Well, apparently it represents the Palestinian flag. Goodness gracious me, what's going on? We'll have that and more after the break.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Now, the conversation, one of the topics that's really got you guys talking is about this Marks and Spencer's advertising. Have you seen what's gone on today? Keeping me company to discuss this, Peter Hitchens, Atul Hat will remain. Now, in case you've missed it, I shall bring you up to speed. So basically, proudly, Marks and Spencer's showcased their Christmas advert. And I can tell you there's a lot to unpick in this, and I'm going to get into the broader topic about what on earth they are doing with this advert, because it received a lot of criticism. People were saying about how work it is and all the rest of it, commenting on the makeup or the missing components, should I say, of that advert. But the bit that's really got people hot under the collar, I don't know if you just saw, because it was all flying by quite quickly, but there was a part of it which was a scene, which was, I might be able to bring it back up for you, this one. So you've got a lady, I'll describe it if you're listening and not watching. She's sitting there in a living room, Christmas tree, she's got a dress on, nice festive scene. Look at that, everybody. What then happened is that Marks and Spencer themselves decided to zoom in and showcase the fireplace. Can you see this? So if you're watching, not listening, I shall describe it again. So you've got a few Christmas hats. You've got red, silver, they say, and green Christmas hats thrown over a fire, and the fire is lit. What's then gone on is that people have said, hang on a second, this represents a Palestinian flag being set on fire. Marks and Spencer's have absolutely panicked. They've removed that bit from their advert, and they've issued grovelling statements, basically, saying that they didn't want to cause offence to anybody. Now, forgive me, right? So there you go. In case you're not familiar with the Palestinian flag by now, yes, it's got black, white, green and red in it. Yes, nothing wrong with your colour vision if you can see that. But so has a lot of other countries got those colours. Does this represent to you, Peter, the burning of a Palestinian flag? And were Marks and Spencer's right to remove this from their advert and apologise?
Well, no, it doesn't represent the burning of a Palestinian flag. It obviously doesn't. The film was made, as I understand, in August, before all this blew up, and the idea that someone would have thought, right, let's insert the secret burning of a Palestinian flag in our Marks and Spencer's Christmas advertisement is absurd in so many different ways that I don't know who could believe it. But the problem is that there are in our society people who will believe the most fantastic things. And I can see what went through the minds of Marks and Spencer's when they were accused of this. And it's not, what can I say? I'm not defending it. It is absurd. But you can see why, when you're up against beliefs of that kind, you panic.
What do you make to it?
I broadly agree. I think it's absolute tripe that this was any deliberate act. There's no intent there, as Peter said. It was filmed in August. And it sort of spotlights the extent to which idiotic conspiracism pervades so many of the filter bubbles online. I do, however, think the Marks and Spencer's, I utterly and completely understand why they took that Instagram shot or that bit of the ad down, because they've explained. But the thing is, online, you've got a little group of people who are going to attack you, and it's going to divert. They're trying to roll out their Christmas ads. They spend all year preparing for it, and there's other discussions they want to have. Just get it out, remove it, and kill the conversation. But and I understand why they did it, but it is insane that anyone can think there was intent there when it was filmed in August.
But so many people are desperate to be offended. Absolutely desperate. They spend their lives.
People come for hundreds of miles to be offended in some cases, particularly in Northern Ireland. People would go for very long distances to be offended by orange marches at Drumcree and things like that. It's something people enjoy. One of the chief pleasures in life is to be offended by things. But
righteous rage is very affirming, particularly when you don't have to march anywhere. You can just do it at home in front of a laptop.
Well, there is that too. But if Marks and Spencer's hadn't deleted it, who knows what might have happened next?
Well, so you see, this is the thing, because I think they were pretty pathetic to have deleted it, because by deleting it, what you're basically saying is, maybe it was a Palestinian flag, let me delete it.
In my early years in journalism, there was a famous, I can't remember his name or his paper, but he was famous at the time, editor of a home county's evening newspaper, whose motto was apologise and keep a reader. His journalists, of course, hated this habit, but he would, if ever he was attacked by readers for anything in the paper, he would apologise for it, and he kept his readers. And that is basically the principle at work here. It's not particularly nice and it's not particularly courageous, but in the world of commerce, people will often do it because you can sometimes lose very heavily by standing for principle.
But you see, I actually think it's pretty dangerous. Because if you allow, and this is what I want to move into after the break in a second, if you allow these minority groups to tell you what you intended, so, you know, Marks and Spencer's, they didn't shoot an advert in August with Christmas colours thinking to themselves, and maybe, just maybe, there might be a bit of an escalation in the Israel-Palestine conflict, so let's get ahead of that by lining up these flags. That didn't happen. Nobody with a sane mind thinks it happened. So when you then start going, I'll delete it, you're giving credence then to that ridiculous.
No, I think they got. I think
you are.
They got out the truth. I think that what they're worried about is that the lie will persist, because even with the truth there, the lie persists and it will get kicked on. And the simplest thing to do is just try to remove this, because they want to have another conversation about their ad.
Well, probably they're more terrified, quite frankly. They're seeing what's gone on with the likes of McDonald's. They're seeing what's gone on with the likes of Starbucks. And they're probably sitting there thinking, do I want to get my windows smashed in? Do I want to find my staff at risk? Probably not. And that's probably why they've done it. One of the things that's really got you guys talking about that ad is not just the ridiculousness of those hats. Dawn says, I'm furious about this advert. How dare they take the Christ out of Christmas? Many people, you'd be surprised actually, Atul, many people are offended by this advert because they're saying it's basically offensive to the festive season. This is what Linda's saying, offensive to the festive season and the meaning of Christmas. If anything, it should be the Christian community that they are apologising for undermining this concept of Christmas in the first place. So I want to ask you that. Are they undermining the concept of Christmas? What is going on in this society? Are people chipping away at some of the traditions, the Christian heritage? You tell me. We'll explore that in just a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Alongside me, the columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and the editor of Labour and Cut, Atul Hatwell. A few of you getting in touch telling me that I've got the wrong end of the stick, that people were not offended by the Marks and Spencer advert because of the Palestinian flag. They were, Sheila says, for example, people were insulted by the ad because it was just burning simple traditions. It wasn't about Palestinian ads. She says, I need to go and watch the ad. Someone else says, it was the burning of the Christmas cards and batting the Christmas elf into oblivion that offended people. It wasn't the Palestinian flags. Respectfully, you guys, there is 2 sides to this. I completely agree, and this is the element I want to explore with you guys, about whether or not the tradition of Christmas and all the rest of it is being eroded. I completely agree with you. I hear it. That's offended a lot of people. Marks and Spencer didn't care about that. They were not bothered about offending the majority of people. It was only when the minority of people came along and said about the Palestinian flag, that was the element that they then went on and changed. So there was 2 separate groups of people being offended for 2 different reasons. Only one of them caused Marks and Spencer's to properly change their ad, although someone's been in touch saying they've added the word Christmas on the end of it now because apparently it was Thismas or whatever it was. Where are you on this, what people are saying about this whole erosion of Christmas, of Christianity and all the rest
Well,
of it?
that happened a long time ago, didn't it? I don't recollect Marks and Spencer's Christmas advertisements ever being about the birth of Christ in Bethlehem or choirs of angels or anything of that kind. It's all about consumer goods and buying stuff at Marks and Spencer's. And for many, many years in this country, Christmas has largely been about celebrating the miraculous birth of television in a back room in Soho. It's been nothing to do with Christianity at all. So I don't feel, as somebody who does celebrate Christmas as the birth of our Lord, are particularly bothered if the sort of tatty commercial Christmas of elves and Santa Claus and all the rest of it is mocked, or if people are tired of playing board games or paper hats. I hate paper hats myself, and Christmas cards seem to me to be on their way out because the price of a stamp now more or less the same price as the price of a tin of caviar. So I don't think that it's offensive to Christmas. I don't even feel particularly worried about Christmas elves because I don't believe in them.
Peter, bah humbug. Atul?
I think if one's sense of Christmas is defined by an elf on a shelf or a paper hat, which I also detest paper hats, in common with Peter here. If that defines one's sense of Christmas, that's fine. You will be offended by this Marks and Spencer ad. If your sense of Christmas, however, is defined by being with people you love, maybe there's a religious aspect to it, then this ad has really, you know, how can this ad possibly threaten those tenets, your family, your faith? It's a commercial organisation selling pies and puddings. How on earth does that impact the broader sense of Christmas?
Because many people will say, actually, that this is just the latest example of the fabric of society being undermined. Because actually, Christmas, it is traditionally a time where it's not about you. It's about someone else. It's about coming together with other people, buying gifts for other people to try and spread joy, whatever that gift looks like, trying to spend quality time with other people. That advert, for me, completely undermines all of that and basically says, do you know what? It's all about you and what you want. Stuff everybody else, stuff the collective stuff, but as long as you're happy in life, that's what matters.
That's not how I saw that ad at all. I saw that ad about being comfortable. You know, they're all in social settings, so they're making food. It's not just for one. But what that ad said was some of the rituals which can become a drag. You know, writing Christmas cards, putting a paper out, the things other people expect of you. When you're there with your loved ones, you don't have to do it. Christmas is about you being comfortable with your people, and and no one, the tyranny of having to wear a Christmas hat. You know, that doesn't have to be part of it. Having to send 1,000 cards, that doesn't have to be part of it. You do you, and enjoy and respect Christmas with your family and with and your loved ones. That's how I saw that ad.
Martine is very sensible, says, please, can we all notice that paper decorations were near fireplaces? That is a serious fire risk and not to be encouraged. I mean...
Not many of us have fireplaces anymore, alas.
Well, actually...
Not really allowed.
You've got to be... I was just about to say, you've got to be careful if you've got fireplaces a wood burner, because they will be coming after you and taxing you on that. Honestly, Colin says this advert is totally offensive to Christians. As a loyal customer to M&S, we will not be shopping there again until somebody's sacked.
Well, I think that's unfathomable. In what way is it offensive to Christians? It portrays an entirely secular, unreligious Christmas of decorations, eating and drinking, and gathering together without any reference whatsoever to what, to me, is the central purpose of the festival. So I don't see how it's offensive to Christians. Actually, the commercial approach to Christmas, which has dominated our culture for so long, has pushed out the Christian aspects of Christmas from our society and from thought. I don't think there's any hint of a Christmas carol in the advertisement, or any hint of any mention of the Christmas message at all. And I notice increasingly commercial organisations trying to avoid the use of the word Christmas because they're afraid, I think wrongly, that it will offend people of other religions, and there's no great commitment to it. And I think the thing which the advertisement is supposed to portray is some sort of belief that many women, particularly women who go out to work, are sick of having to go through all the faff of decorations and preparing elaborate cakes and puddings and
why do you assume it's the women that be doing that?
Well, because the women are the people who are most strongly portrayed in the advertisement. Sophie Ellis Bextor and the other actress whose name escapes me are the most prominent people in the advertisement.
John says so many people obsessing about a TV advert is a good indicator of what a bunch of idiots social media has made millions of people become. Samantha, she's absolutely furious about the burning of Christmas cards. Ernie says, Michelle, I've got to say, I wouldn't want either of your two panellists guests around my house at Christmas. Talk about doom and gloom and party poopers.
OK, well, don't invite me. It's all right. I am in fact already engaged, but we all do Christmas. We all do Christmas in our own way, and I trust you'll enjoy yours, without me.
Well, there you go. He's got plans. What can I say? You know what? This whole Christmas stuff, don't get me started. The Christmas markets are now named winter markets.
Exactly.
Get a life. Atul, Peter, thank you very much for your company. Thank you for yours at home as well. Nigel Farage, up next.
Hello again, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather update. Whilst not everywhere saw the stormy weather, it was very wet and very windy for some, particularly southern parts, due to Storm Kieron. However, that feature is now clearing its way into the North Sea, still bringing some blustery and very wet weather to eastern parts of the UK, particularly eastern Scotland, northeast England. As we go through the night and into Friday, here we are going to see some further heavy rain. Clearer skies towards the west and the south, and here under those clear skies, it is likely to turn a little chilly. Some places could get into your low to mid single figures. As we go through Friday then, we are going to see further wet weather, particularly for eastern parts of Scotland and northeast England. Could see some further flooding here with more disruption to travel likely as well. Elsewhere, a scattering of showers coming down on a northwesterly wind, so particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, but feeding into England and Wales as well. Some sunny breaks in between the showers, and we're likely to see highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius, so a touch higher than today. Into the weekend, and Saturday may start with some mist and fog patches, particularly in the north, then a swathe of wet weather and strong winds pushes its way up from the south, affecting many parts of England and Wales. Also some showery outbreaks across the far north of Scotland, but something drier and brighter in between. More showers as we go through Sunday into Monday, and temperatures staying near normal for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.